We know that students need to practice the ideas and techniques that they're learning and receive feedback on that practice. Let's now talk about some instructional strategies for providing this kind of practice and feedback to students. And we'll start with a few that involve feedback from the instructor. Here's an example from a statistics course that I taught recently. I had taught this statistics course a few times and wanted to add a data visualization piece to the course this particular semester. I find that data visualization, interpreting data visualizations, creating data visualizations is an increasingly important component of statistics, and I wanted to prepare my engineering students to be able to at least make sense of complex data visualizations. So early in the semester, to get them involved in thinking along these lines, I had a class session where I shared with them some fairly sophisticated data visualizations of high-dimensional data sets, 4 or 5 dimensions of data on the same visualization. Then I gave them a fairly complex data set, one dealing with ecological footprint data for different countries. And I asked them to pair up and brainstorm some ways that they might visualize this data set. And so I asked them to get out a pen and paper and start to kind of doodle some ideas, thinking very intentionally about how they would represent different variables in the data set visually, either through color or size or other elements. And so after they had a few minutes to brainstorm, I asked them to get out their cell phones. They were actually a little bit surprised to hear that during class, but I wanted them to take photos of their doodles and then text or email those photos to me. What this allowed me to do, and this was a fairly large class. I had about 72 students in this course, and it was kind of hard to get around class, so it wasn't that practical to come around and kind of look at everyone's work. And instead, I had them, again, take out their cell phones and snap photos and send those photos to me. I was able to pull up pictures on the big screen and share some of the student work during class. Now, I would consider this an example of practice and feedback because the students had to practice some of their burgeoning data visualization skills to design these doodles. And I wasn't able to provide feedback to every student during class, but I was able to pull up some of the more interesting doodles, brainstorms that the students shared, share those back with the entire class, and offer some commentary. Here's a nice example of using size to represent this. This element of this visualization might be a little confusing given how you're using proportion, that kind of thing. And so all students got a chance to practice. Some students got very direct feedback on their work, but all students got to hear from me about some student work and get a form of feedback. Now, open-ended work like those doodles can be a great opportunity for practice. So can multiple choice questions. Here's a question from Patrick M. Lynn. He teaches astronomy at Cuesta College. Here's the question. Consider the view of the northeastern horizon shown at a certain date and time. Which of the following best describes the positions of these constellations 24 hours later? Answer A, slightly lower in the sky, closer to the northeast horizon. Answer B, exactly the same place. Answer C, slightly higher in the sky, farther up on the northeast horizon, etc. What this question asks students to do is to take what they know about the Earth's rotation in the night sky and apply it to this particular problem. It's a really nice example of kind of application level practice. Now, Patrick uses clickers with this question, and so he'll have students all respond A, B, C, D, or E, and then he'll have a nice bar graph on the big screen showing the distribution of student responses. Now, what Patrick can then do is, as he talks about the question and the answer choices, he's providing feedback to the students. They had the chance to kind of practice what they knew as they were answering. And as he talks through the correct answer, which happens to be C in this choice, the students who got the correct answer get some nice feedback, some confirmation that they understood it. But as he talks about some of the more popular wrong answers, the students who chose those answers get feedback as well. And so this is another example of giving students an opportunity to practice what they're learning in class and have the instructor provide a form of feedback to all students, perhaps more tailored feedback to some. Here's a third example. It's really great when you can do practice and feedback during class. It's a fantastic way to make use of class time, but sometimes the practice needs to happen outside of class. This is perhaps my all-time favorite use of Twitter in teaching. This is an example from Margaret Rebega. She's a biology professor at the University of Connecticut, and she teaches a course on ornithology, the study of birds. Now, this course fulfills a general education requirement, so it's usually a pretty big course, 75 or 100 students in it. One of her goals in this course is to have students connect what they're learning in class with the world outside, right? She wants them to understand that when they walk out the classroom door and they see birds, they can actually start to understand bird behavior, bird anatomy, things like that. And so what she does is she asks them each week to use Twitter to share observations of birds in the wild. So as they're traveling to class or going to work or going home, if they see a bird, they can pull out their cell phone and tweet an observation about that bird. They have to share where they saw the bird, they have to describe what they see, and then they have to also connect it to something that they're learning in class. They use a hashtag BirdClass, which acts as kind of a key word, making it really easy for everyone to find these tweets. Let me share just a few to give you a sense of what the students are doing when they're out observing birds. The top one is from a student named Casey. She writes, "Saw a heron flying over Fenton River. Its large wings provide low wing loading for its body size. Good for flight." Hillary says, "Morbid, but saw a dead bird in my barn today. I'm guessing all the feather lice had already left." That may not have been Hillary's first reaction, but she's making a nice connection between what she saw and what she's learning in class. And then here's just a spectacular one from a student named Daniel. He's in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. He writes, "Saw an albino red-tailed hawk. Lack of melanin really screws up your camouflage." And he actually managed to get a photo of this bird. Pretty amazing stuff. So again, the goal is for students to kind of transfer what they're learning inside of class to outside of class contexts. Margaret really wants her students to understand that, again, what they're learning in class, they can actually use as they're observing birds in the wild. Twitter is just a great medium for this. It allows students to just kind of take the cell phone that they already have in their pocket and write down some quick observations and share it. And so it's a really great opportunity for outside of class practice. In terms of feedback, what Margaret Rebega can do is, as the tweets are coming in, she can respond to individual students and give them a little bit of feedback, maybe adding a little extra information or clarifying their observation a bit. And then during class, she can, again, select a few tweets to share with the entire class and offer some commentary. One last example of feedback from the instructor. This is a practice that I adopted several years ago. I learned about it from one of my graduate school instructors, Mike Mahalik here at Vanderbilt. It's the idea of test corrections. And so here's kind of how this works in my class. When I hand my students back their midterm exam, they have the opportunity to do corrections on any problem where they miss points. So a week later, they turn in the exam, the original exam, along with full write-ups of any problems where they lost points. And they can earn up to a third of their points back. So if a student made a 70 out of 100 on the exam, that's a loss of 30 points. If they do all the corrections, they can get 10 points back and pull that up to an 80. What this does is it uses the students' motivation to get good grades to really kind of motivate a behavior that they should be doing anyway. So typically a test is a kind of a, as we use the term, a summative assessment, right? It's meant to evaluate what students know and what they don't know. But ideally, especially in a math class or most STEM classes, students should be going over that first test they get back, figuring out what they did wrong, fixing their mistakes, because whatever was covered in that first test, the subsequent tests are going to build on that. So with my test correction policy, what I'm doing is I'm trying to motivate students to do that kind of review of the test, turning the test from a purely summative exercise to a formative assessment as well. So they start to get some feedback on what they know and what they don't know. One of the wrinkles here is that I typically encourage my students outside of class to work together on problem sets, so they can really collaborate and learn from each other well. On test corrections, I ask that they not do that. If they want to get any help on the test corrections, they're supposed to come in and see me during office hours. And what that means is that the students who did the worst, who probably should have been coming to see me during office hours anyway, are even more motivated to come in and get the help that they need as they're working through their test corrections.